So, recently, TVC has released this video where he just bitches about the newest live-action version of a Disney film. As you know, Disney is now currently making a whole bunch of live-action versions, movies of their cartoons. They did it with Cinderella. They did it last week with The Jungle Book, came out last week. Go see this movie. It is awesome. The animals are awesome. Go see this movie. Anyway, according to the Vigilant Christian's newest, or one of his newest videos, I should say, Disney is planning to make a live-action version of their Friendly Giant cartoon they made God knows when. Probably sometime in like the 50s or even earlier. I don't know, I never watched it. But of course it wouldn't be Disney or it wouldn't be the Vigilant Christian if he didn't find something that is satanic about it. And the thing that he bitches about in this newest offering, well, newest, he puts out like, you and I both know he puts out like 3 videos a day, so newest is always as new as they can get. But in his newest offering, he's going to talk about the Nephilim, and we are going to take a look at this thing of his, this video of his, but I am going to fast forward a bit. At first he talks about how Disney is satanic and blah 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 blah. I'm going to skip to the part that I actually wanted to talk about, where he tries to talk about the Nephilim, which in Jewish mythology, according to the Bible, were like fallen, or the descendants of the fallen angels that went with Lucifer. You know, those 1/3 of the angels that went with Lucifer and had children with men, and those are like the Nephilim gods or what the fuck ever. And yeah, he basically talks about how there are Nephilim in all kinds of mythologies throughout the ancient world. And yeah, there's a car going by, but fuck it. And we're gonna take a look at this clip, and after that I'm gonna tell you why this is bullshit. So let's take a look.
As I mentioned, you can look all throughout the different civilizations, and you're going to hear about different accounts of Nephilim, of giants. You know, you can look at Greek mythology, they're in there. You look at a lot of the Egyptian, you know, statues that they're creating. It's kind of like they were drawing the gods, you could say, the Nephilim, these giant beings. You even have some Indian tribes talking about giants who were able to run beside the buffalo and literally scoop them up with one hand. So I don't know a human on the face of the earth that could do something even close to that, but that's something that the Indians were saying that was really legit happening. And all the other accounts as well, not even in the Bible, but just through human history from different civilizations, says that the giants were evil. A lot of the times you're going to hear about the giants eating human beings. This was one of the problems, was that they began to eat the humans, us. Okay, so that's why God, one of the reasons that God ended up sending the flood. I would recommend this to anyone who wants to just know more true legends, tales of giants, and the plumed serpents. This is a great documentary by Stephen Quayle that kind of goes into this. So I would just recommend, if you're interested in knowing more about these ancient giants throughout history and the different accounts, that you would check this out and get educated, get up to speed.
That was bullshit. But let's get to the first point I wanted to talk about with this whole Nephilim thing. And the reason why I do a video about this is because it's not just the Vigilant Christian that keeps bringing this up. It's also other preachers and pastors and whatnot, what kind of rummage you find online. They sometimes bring this up, like Bet Kent Hovind brings it up in one of his seminars of ridiculousness, and that's why I'm covering it. But the first thing I want to talk about is you have to remember who wrote these stories, who wrote I think it's in Leviticus, Deuteronomy, somewhere in the Old Testament, the Israelites come across like these giants, and of course we have the giant Goliath and all that, but you got to remember who wrote this. People from the Middle East. Now my problem with that is this. People from the Middle East, even today, usually don't get that tall. The average, Italian, Spaniard, Lebanese, Greek, you name it. People that live around the Mediterranean, in that area, in that whole area, they tend to get like 165, 170, that's in meters by the way, at the most. So, whereas in like Northern Europe, like here, the average height is about 175, 180. Like, again, it's not everyone. I myself, I'm 160, 158 to be exact, but on average, people from Northern Europe, from like Scandinavia and such, they get tall. They get really tall when compared to people from the Middle East, people from Italy and Spain and all those countries centered around the Mediterranean. And interesting fact, by the way, that's not to digress, but well, fuck it, I am digressing. That's one of the first things that the Romans actually were pretty astonished about when they came to this land and they made contact with the Celts before the migration period. This entire area where I'm filming, this beautiful area, was still Celtically dominated. Celtically? Is that even... Not Celtic dominated, whatever, you know what I mean. And the first thing that the Romans noticed was that the Celts were really, really, really tall. Like, we're talking about people that are, as I said, 175, 180, in some extreme cases, even 2 meters tall. So, the thing, and going back to the whole Nephilim thing, is that when the Israelites, in that story that I mentioned, when they meet large people, it's all just a matter of perspective. To people that, on average, don't get taller than, let's say, 165, 170, someone who is 175, 180, 185, yes, you would describe this as a giant. Same thing with Goliath, who, according to some historians and archaeologists, was part of the... in German we call them Seevölker. I don't know what the English term would be. I guess sea people, like seafaring, kind of like Vikings, but not really. They didn't have permanent settlements. They were like this nomadic, seafaring, warring tribe that caused a whole bunch of shit in Egypt, for example, and like all across the Middle East. They stirred up shit, and they were apparently from someplace else, and yes, so by that, like TVC claims that Goliath is this Nephilim god kind of stupid thing. Bullshit. So that's basically what the first thing that I wanted to talk about, is the whole matter of perspective. And of course it could be, if Goliath actually really did exist, if that actually really did happen, who's to say that Goliath wasn't just a really tall guy? You know, just the extreme, rare exception where someone is actually taller than the average tribesman or countryman. Ever think of that, TVC? Of course you didn't. So the second thing I wanted to talk about, as we've seen in the video, he talks about how in all like European, especially Mediterranean cultures and religions, they all have these stories of these giants, these big, evil, monstrous giants that plague the land and tear everything up. And they're supposed to be like the Nephilim, like, as I said, the descendants of fallen angels, and that stupid shit. But the one thing that always amuses me, and it just shows how dishonest and, what's the word I'm looking for? Not dishonest, and hypocritical, that's the word. Hypocritical these people like the Vigilant Christian and White Rabbit and all of those fuckers from the Christian Truther Network actually are, is they'll happily believe the story of Thor fighting, or not Thor, but Odin fighting the giants, fighting the ice giants, and fighting the rock giants and the fire giants and all that stuff from Norse mythology, and they'll believe in whatever kind of giant creature Egyptian mythology has to offer and all that. They'll gladly take that story as fact, as proof of their scriptures, that their scriptures are right, because there are giants in the Edda, and the Israelites talk about giants, and Goliath was a giant, therefore the Bible is true. But when it comes to the other stories in the Edda, for example, that's apparently all bullshit. They'll gladly believe the story of Odin fighting the giants, but the story where Thor fights the Midgard snake in whatever kind of, like, in the Eternal Sea or something, there's the story where he goes out with his boat, and then the Midgard snake attacks and takes his hammer and just clunks the thing on the head or something like that. Or the story of, or the origin story of Sleipnir, Odin's horse, which comes about by Loki transforming into a horse, then having sex with an actual female horse. That female horse gets pregnant, bears Sleipnir, and then Loki gives that horse to Thor. That's all bullshit, apparently. Those stories, anything that's not vaguely, that doesn't vaguely somehow connect to the Bible, that's just bullshit. Sorry, TVC, you can't have it either way. It's the same thing with, say, Leviticus chapter 20. One of the two chapters that has the anti-gay verse. It's verse 13. Leviticus chapter 20, verse 13, that says something about you gotta kill gay people. What they often omit, of course, is the part where it says, you gotta kill your kid if he's rebellious, you gotta kill your wife if she cheats on you, you gotta kill whomever else. They'll ignore that, but they'll take the gay verse. It's the same thing with these pre-Christian legends. If anything sounds vaguely familiar to the Bible, or something that's in the Bible, that's fact, but the other stuff, that's just pagan bullshit. You can't have it both ways, TVC. Either all of it is true, maybe even all of it to some degree, or all of it is bullshit. You can't cherry pick, you can't choose. Sorry, but that's how it works. Okay, so and the last thing that I wanted to talk about, because all good things come as three, alle guten Dinge sind drei, is when he talks about, like, there being, like, or, yeah, he says, like, all over the world there are stories of, like, giants roaming the earth and killing people and blah, 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 blah. Nope. For example, in Central American mythology, in Mayan mythology and theology, we find nothing of the sort. And remember, people, the only thing that we actually have as go-to source is the Popol Vuh itself. That is the only, I wouldn't say legit source, but it's the only, like, definitive work, definitive religious work that we have of the Mayan world that actually tells an entire story that is actually one whole thing. Yes, there are religious imageries and religious stories depicted on many Mayan vases and that, but those are just referencing the Popol Vuh essentially. But if you read the Popol Vuh, there is no mention of giants anywhere, like, at all. Now, there are the two stories of the hero twins defeating Kabra Khan and Sipagna. Those stories are kind of similar to, say, Odin killing the frost giants or David killing Goliath. They are, yes. But here's the thing. Kabra Khan and Sipagna are not giants. Nowhere in the entire Popol Vuh is there mention of giants. Now you might see Kabra Khan and Sipagna if you Google them, see pictures of them. They do appear as, like, these big giant things, but excuse me, but that's just deviant art. That's just modern artists and their interpretation. There is no assumption directly from the Popol Vuh itself that Sipagna and Kabra Khan are actually giants. So, congratulations, the Vigilant Christian. Mayan mythology and Mayan theology, again, kicks your ass.